Morning, everybody. It's Tony Jones here with Phil Ratcliffe. Another live broadcast coming to you this Friday morning. Hope you're having a good day. So today our topic is going to be raising financially savvy kids and some of the tools and communications that we can do with our children to make them better with their money as they grow up. So I think it's a good topic. It's something we should always be working on, you know.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's something that just glides by through life. They think, I'm living my life, I'm providing for my kids, they have food and clothes, and we have a house, or whatever the case. And I think a lot of times maybe we're leading by example, but we're not really teaching our kids, or maybe they're going to teach it in school, and it doesn't happen very often. And so, unfortunately, it's really important. And regardless of how you feel, about capitalism and socialism and all this, we live in a pretty capitalistic world, right?
Right.
And so the better steward you are of your resources, the more successful you're going to be in your life, because you're just going to be able to use those, or your kids are going to be able to use those to make more of their hopes and dreams and everything to actually become a reality, or at least doesn't really hold them down.
Right. And capitalist or not, I mean, a lot of it has to do with what we're going to talk about too. It's just, money is still important, and dealing with it is important. I know that most of the meetings we have with prospective clients, virtually every meeting, I have to tell people, stop telling me their regrets, because basically everybody has it. And because they're not great with with finance issues, they don't do things with their children, because they themselves have not been perfect.
Sure, and they might be embarrassed or even ashamed at the worst.
In their situation, but it's still important, to do those things. So anyway, that's our topic. I think it's going to be a good one. We're going to do a couple things. You want to go through the outline then?
Yeah, I think we touched on the beginning of it, and obviously I think most of us would agree leading by example is probably the best way to show your kids that it's important and it has led to success, etc. I think that is, the fact that what we had talked about, maybe not have done the best of what we intended to do, or the ideal that we think we should live up to, prevents a lot of parents from wanting to really open up about their finances to their children, and help them grow and learn. And I'd say the second thing is that it is kind of a revolving door. Their parents didn't really talk to them about their finances, and they think it should be something that's secret, or they're afraid that their kids are going to go tell their friends how much they make, or that they're in this debt or what so, and so it doesn't get done. And I think the first hurdle we have to get over is recognizing that, seeing if there is anything in your past, to where you're like, well, my family, we never talk about money. That's not necessarily a good thing. I don't think you should let it ruin your relationships, if people fight about it, or what so, and there's probably some deeper underlying issues there, but you got to identify that and help yourself get over it, so that you feel comfortable talking to your kids about it, because, first of all, it may inspire you to do better yourself, which would be great. Secondly, it's going to help your kids live a much better life. I mean, the majority of divorces, when the root cause comes down to it, usually are financially related. And so you could be setting your kids up for, a lot of years of heartache and stuff. It's not just money.
Right. And so, what you don't want to be sending your kid off when they're 18 or 19, off to the real world or college or wherever, with having no knowledge of how to write a check, or what a debit card is for, or how to, budget and watch their money, or to give money. I mean, there's just so many lessons that, and it's not easy, because it's just one more thing as a parent, just one more responsibility. So some of it is just time, which I'm glad we're going to talk about one of the tools that we are today, because I know myself, it happened in fits and starts, with budgeting and, chores and things like that, and people have different views about, well, should I compensate my children for chores, and if so, what do you do with the money and things? So it's a great topic.
Absolutely. So first of all, you got to get your house in order, and so we've worked with lots of people that sometimes they know they need to do stuff and they'll contact us and come talk to us, because a lot of times our initial appointments are complimentary, And so it is easy to go talk to a financial advisor. But a lot of times, where we do the most good is after people have kind of, gotten the house in order, like with the basics in terms of, living within a budget, building up actual assets to where they're getting to investments, and they have more investment related questions and tax and financial planning, etc. But some of those early stages will refer people that aren't maybe totally ready for us to programs like Dave Ramsey, has been a great partner for us and has helped a lot of people get to where they are going to be a lot more financially successful and out of debt and building good habits. And so you doing this yourself is really going to teach you a lot about helping your kids build habits and would so as well too. Plus, you're not a hypocrite, right? We're not telling somebody, do as I say, not as I do. Another thing too, a lot of people, it's not totally their fault, I mean, we all have to take responsibility for our actions, but sometimes there's issues. And we have complementary kind of peer professionals called money coaches, and they actually take that softer side of things to dig and figure out, how did you develop your relationship with money and your finances, and is there something kind of, psychologically or behaviorally holding you behind, and how can we address this and fix it? So, some of these things can really help you if you've had struggles, but once you get that in order, you're going to be in a much better place to help someone else, right? It's kind of it's getting old, but the airline thing of like, put your mask on before you help other people put their mask on, right?
Well, and I think you make a great point. Everybody's imperfect when it comes to money and finance, but being able, when you can teach something, it means you know the subject matter better usually. There's a lot of bad teachers out there, so it puts you in a position of kind of getting your own house in order, I think, if you're going to do that. It makes you be more cognizant of what you're doing with your money.
And if your kids are young, you're not going to get into the complicated subjects with them. So you've got some years to figure it out and get it right, okay? But you want to have it right by the time that they're teenagers and going into college, because you can be like, wow, look at all this stuff that I've done and experience-wise, and let me show you. The earlier years, I think, the building blocks of what you're going to do. Obviously, I think the first one is work ethic, right? And so just like you had alluded to, Tony, some people don't want to pay their kids for chores, right? At least the basic ones. Because you know what, you're paying for them to live, you're paying for them to eat, they're part of a family, they should contribute without expectation of, monetary reimbursement,
Right.
And that's kind of my philosophy. I think for the basic things, that's how I am too. There's certain things the kids are expected to do, that's not reimbursable. But at a certain point, you can use things that you have to do that takes you a ton of time, kind of offload that work to your kids in a way that's going to teach them things, and then they can earn some money, and then they have their own resources that they can learn to be responsible with.
Yeah. Well, and what you're going to see too, just like chores. There's 5 kids out of my household, 5 out of yours. Mine are all older than yours. They're all going to take away different lessons and things, but at least you have the conversation and they're starting to think about these things, and tie them into chores. And because I agree, I mean, most chores, the dinner table shouldn't be left there with, a bunch of dirty dishes and stuff. People should be putting the dish away, rinsing them off, loading the dishwasher, washing the dishes. That's basic stuff, but there are things that are above and beyond that I think you can compensate them a little bit.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there are all kinds of things that you may do over time, like, that you may have paid somebody else to do, like wash your car or wet back your carpets, or like in mine, we even wet back the couches every once in a while, right? With all those kids and pets and stuff, and it needs it. And mowing the lawn and trimming the lawn, it takes me a lot of time, right? I have to pay somebody else to do that. Yeah. And I can shift that to them to where these things get done, they get some resources, and then we can move on to the next thing. So once you kind of figure this out, and it can be a super win-win, because you can have a nicer place to live, you can take some work off of your back if you have to work a lot on other things, or there's certain things that they're just not going to be able to do, like actually do cooking. Maybe as they get older that'll change and they may have an interest in that, and that would be great as well too. But I mean, it can be good for everybody to kind of shift some of these things. And once they have those resources, then we kind of hit the next step, which is what do you do with money? And like, I think the simplest, kind of paradigm is spend, save, give. You want to expand
Yeah,
on that?
I mean, so it, when people come to us at all different, decades in their life, a lot of them haven't even started to do these things, so the first thing, of course, you've got to make the money, and this gets people thinking about that. Whether you like it or not, we have to do that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have to think about how you're going to earn the money. And I think when you get your kids thinking about that, they're more apt to work, especially to go find things outside of the home when they're old enough. But obviously too, what do you do with that money, right? And here's where it comes. If you're gonna, you got to save some of it. If you're gonna think long term.
We gotta build habits. Saving's just not natural to human beings, right?
Yeah.
We killed something, we ate it all, because you never know where you're gonna get it, and it could explode, right? And you
Right.
build up those calories to use later, and you shared with your neighbors, because they may get something later that you weren't gonna have, and they'd share back to you. It was a good kind of, that was your saving, right?
Yeah.
Just sharing
Yeah.
with each other was kind of your saving.
But that, it's an issue that people face at all different ages. Some do not start to save until
Well, they never
it's
had anything.
way
Yeah.
too
Nobody
late. And they
showed
didn't
up.
have anything.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who have a good amount of resource who still just spend everything they have.
Or the parents just provide for them, and the kid didn't even get to make a decision,
Yeah. So often, right? And so,
Yeah.
and then the other part of that is giving too. I mean, how often are you at church when you're giving your child a buck or two and they're throwing it, in the coffer, so to help the church, just as an example, you're giving to the Salvation Army guy, or you're giving to somebody a buck or two, but this teaches them that they themselves can take their money and help other people and influence it. So it's all those things, and to teach people this at an early age and to manage their money correctly enough to be able to do those things.
And it makes a real difference. I mean, you see stuff on TV where they talk about, feeding the homeless, or, helping the American Red Cross drive blood, and you could see this, but unless you're like a donor, like giving blood, or you've actually contributed money to where you'd like, personally, or you tell your kids, like, they wouldn't be able to do this without what you did.
Yeah.
It like makes it more real, because now they're a part of that having been done. And it's not some amorphous thing that happens. I mean, I even think about, getting older and into business, and you get on board of directors and different things like this, that you make these organizations run, and most people, or if you get involved with the government and different things like that, it's
Yeah.
like someone's doing these things, and I think in our minds, until you experience it, there's just some amorphous that this stuff exists and happens,
Yeah.
but it's unreal. And this is an important part of life, and the world would be better if people like shared more and gave more and what so. And so, from a young age, you can help your kids realize that, and they'll feel tied
Yeah.
to that.
And going back to the last interview we had, the $52 million project, you just have to give $1 away a week. So look that up if you didn't
Easy.
listen to our last show. And that, just things like that. And then they could see more of a connection of, like Phil said, how things work in the world and the voids that we fill as a society and a community.
When I first started with my kids and we like standardized it, I got some pushback on it, because they get any money that they get, 50% of it is their spend pot, 40% of it is their save or invest pot, and 10% of it's give. And so they can't take the give and move it over to the other two pots, but they can take any amount from the other two pots and put it into the give if they want.
So
But
they
that
gave
money
you- they
is
gave you
automatically.
pushback? They gave
Yeah,
you pushback?
because they're like, well, if I do something, then I only get half the money. I'm like, no, you're getting all of it, and really you're getting 90% that you can spend on yourself.
Right,
It's just 40% has to be spent on yourself in the future,
right.
and you gotta let it grow in the interim. But at first, it was a little bit of a hurdle to like get over the fact that they only got 50% of what they earned now.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the conversation is so great, because when you go to work for somebody, much of your compensation is healthcare or 401k contributions or for other
Taxes.
things. So you're not taxes, right? We're helping the government.
Yeah.
So you're not getting 100% of your pay at that point. You don't even know what it is for the most part. But
Yeah.
I think it's great to have kids speaking up and trying to dig a little more.
So then once you get beyond and the spend, save, give, and obviously you can have your own kind of breakdown of what you want to encourage or, set the minimum guidelines. Then the next thing is after that money starts flowing, eventually you got to encourage or curate the behavior, which is naturally, I'm gonna think, for a lot of people, gonna lead into budgeting. Budgeting is not the most fun thing, but people should understand it and understand how their cash flow works and the fact that generally they should spend less than they make. Right? Like when it comes down to simplicity, and you'll find that different kids are better or worse at this. And if you start it from a younger age, it's very easy, like classically conditioning, to like encourage the good behaviors and bad behaviors, and over time it just kind of changes. Especially if you have multiple kids and the siblings see what the other ones are doing and how well it works out for them, it will change their behavior as well too. But you gotta pay attention to it. Just like you would anything else, trying to raise good kids to have good character traits and behaviors, right?
Right, and they're all gonna have different, they're all gonna come out of it with different habits. I mean, I'm just thinking of the 5 at home, as they're older, from the ones that wanna save every penny to the ones that wanna spend every penny and in between. But I think at a young age, if you get that, the lessons that they need to learn as they become adults will start earlier. And they won't end up waiting till they're 60 before they start realizing that, the men are mortal, they're gonna have to retire, and, so.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you look at it, I mean, like, if you start early enough doing this stuff, and we're gonna show you an app that I've kind of adopted and used, which is pretty cool to help you do it. But like even my 11-year-old and 9-year-old own stock, right? And eventually it's gonna grow into a decent amount. And the one that saved more or invested more is gonna have this big chunk of change later on. The other one's gonna be like, I made just as much money and I don't have that, so like they're gonna remember that, and it's gonna change their behavior, well before they even hit college and even really start making real money, so that later on there's like, oh, should I participate in this 401k program and do more than just the minimum 4 or 5%? For sure, I should be doing 10 to 15. Oh, there's a place where a stock purchase program where I get to buy it for 80% of the cost. You wouldn't believe how many even really smart people forego these plans,
Right.
when they could just cycle that money through there, make a good rate of return, but at a minimum, average, they're gonna make like 10 to 20% just because they got to buy it at that discount,
Right.
And so these things are not gonna fly by them like that. So I would say the last building block thing is once you've got, they understand the cash flow, and of course, as Tony said, they're all gonna do it differently a little bit per their kind of who they are. But then you need to kind of encourage and help them understand how to use that power to tackle bigger goals, or saving for like major purchases, or saving. And so, I mean, it could be as easy as your kid wants to buy their own new version of an Xbox, and it might take them a year and a half or 2 years of saving just to be able to do something like that. But man, that'd be a huge accomplishment for like an 8-year-old, right?
Absolutely.
Crazy. And so then that could turn into later, like your 13-year-old wanting to save for a car when they're, 17 or something like that. You could do what Dave Ramsey did and say that whatever you save, I'll match it up to a certain amount. I think his kids saved so much that if he would have matched that much, they would have been able to buy like a Mercedes or something like that. And he was like, that's ridiculous for a kid for their first car. Right? But, I mean, that's cool, right? If a kid has that experience and that confidence to have accomplished those little things that turn into bigger things, imagine what they'll do later. They'll move out of your basement faster. They'll be able to, they'll be able to take care of you when you get older if things don't work out, right? Anything to add on?
No, I think that's all good. I just think, it's education, and this is, it's real world education, and that's what we need to be focusing on for kids. And, as I said, when you if they've never been taught that and they're 18 or 19 and they're going to college, college is one of the biggest variables we have, for young people making one of the biggest financial decisions of their life. And if they've kind of got a little bit of a framework hopefully, that'll be a better, after the Mercedes, I guess, and buying, whatever college package they're going to look for, they'll have a little bit more understanding of money, so.
Okay.
With that being said, yeah, why don't we do BusyKid?
So we are gonna share screen now. So let's throw it up there. This is an app that I personally use. I mean, there are other things out there. I just did my due diligence where I was starting. I'm very familiar with it. So this is what we're gonna demo. It's not necessarily an endorsement. We just wanna show you something that you could use to make it easier for you, to make it a much more rich and interactive experience for your kids as well. So what this app does, and the reason I came across it is I was just, I was coming up with a thing, and I felt like sometimes randomly giving my kids money, based on what they had done or what my perception is of what they had done. And I said, there's gotta be a better way to do this. There's gotta be a way to track what's going on, then to be able to pay them, and for them to be able to check things off so that there's accountability, et cetera. And so after I looked at all this, there were solutions for this, and the one that I liked the best was BusyKid. And so with it, what you end up doing is you create chores on there. You can create whatever ones you want at whatever intervals you want. You could say this happens every day, or this happens once a week, or this happens once a month on this day of the month, or this happens a couple times a year, whatever. You can make the frequency whatever you want into there, and you build out these things. And if you have multiple kids, then when you make a task, you can either say any of them can do it, or you could assign it to just one kid. So if one kid is responsible for this extra stuff and another one's this, so you can build it out however you want. And so then when the kids can look on there to see like what's coming up that they need to do, and then they can kind of plan ahead to see when they want to do it. Like a lot of times I have things on certain days, but if it's on there for Tuesday and they complete it on Thursday, I don't care to a certain degree. It just has to be done within the pay week, right? Because what ends up happening is after they check these off, you have to go through and confirm, obviously, right, that they're not cheating or what so, and the work is done. You have to approve their payday. And so generally that's every Friday, you should approve it on Thursday, and then what the app does is debit you for the amount that goes to all the kids after you've approved it for the next day, so that they get paid on Friday.
So are
Most
you
everybody else does.
approving each job, right? I mean, because they could do a good job over here and.
I mean, if your kids are really trustworthy, and there's not a lot of chores, then it's pretty transparent. You can just go approve, right?
Yeah.
My kids are kind of younger, and so I'm double checking, what so, and I've put a ton of extra chores in there, just things that I want done,
Right.
that I'm not gonna do myself, or well, I'm going to do them myself if they don't do them, but, or my wife is, so one of us, right?
Right.
So I scrolled through there and just looked. Last night I was just doing it, and I was just like, did you really clean up the whole basement in the morning and in the afternoon? Because I got an AM and PM on stuff. With 5 kids that are, all below 12, they can like destroy the house multiple times a day.
Right.
And so, you gotta go through there. And like sometimes I was like, did you really clean the bathroom really good? Or did you just like pick up some stuff out of there? Because to me, cleaning the bathroom is they have to scrub out the toilets and the bathtub and, really clean it good,
Like the military, right?
Yeah. And so, you gotta go through that and double check, and, obviously you should teach them how to do it to a certain standard, and then every once in a while, because they're kids, you're gonna have to go inspect and raise the bar a little bit, because it will continually degrade over time and they'll just check it off. So it's a little bit of work to go through if you've got a decent amount of stuff in there to make sure that they're actually doing a good job for what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And then once that payday is approved and you pick your split into there, so like I said, mine's like 50, 40, 10, you could change that percentage however you want. I think you gotta be careful to take too much away from the spend category, or they may not wanna do the stuff, right? And so then that money gets credited to them. There's an optional debit card you can get for them, and I think this is where they make probably the majority of their money. And the debit card you activate, I think it costs you like $7.99 per year.
You mean
plus BusyKid.
Right.
And then they, make the merchant fees or a part of them, or what so, off of the transactions, or what so that the merchant has to pay. And so then your kids can take the money that they have on the spend, and they can either leave it in the spend and they can give it back to you, in which case you're kind of like an ATM giving them cash, and that's free. Or they can load it onto their card, and then they can spend it anywhere. The save card, or the save category, basically they have a integration deal, and I'm sure there's some kind of kickback from this company too, how they make some money, with a company called Stockpile. And as you can see where we're sharing the screen right here, the kids can pick whatever stocks that they want. So like my oldest, she just keeps buying Apple, and my youngest owns like Amazon and Alphabet, which is Google basically. And then when they do that, the first time they do it, it'll kick you over a thing to set up a custodial account for them, because obviously if they're a minor, they can't own an investment account. So you basically set up what's called a uniform gift to minor account. And this company, when the money comes over, it's like a gift certificate that gets credited to their account. And then once you set it up, you can send them an invite if you have set up email, or like all my kids have our old phones that are just on the Wi-Fi, so they have like an Apple account, so they can get text, but only really from us when they're on our Wi-Fi. So I just text over to them, they click it, and they just put in a couple things, and then they can log in from that phone to see their stuff, right? And they can see it growing and doing well. And then when they want to donate, then they just pick the charity that they want to, and it empties these. And then they see it over here. And now the donate one, I think you have to be a little bit more proactive to like show your kids what the charities do, and like what their money's doing. But that again comes back to you, and you have to make the donation as an adult. And then if you get a confirmation from that, then you can forward it back to them. That's what I do, like to their email or what, so that they can see that it actually happened and what so. So again, it's not. It is a little bit complex, but it really streamlines the actionable of what they do to getting something, to seeing the money saved in a fun way with companies that they know and like and buy stuff from, that over time will grow. And then when they give, then there's feedback from that. So the beauty of the system is it makes it easier for you. There's accountability, and then there's immediate feedback to the kids and ongoing over time. And so, especially when we're younger, probably any time in our life, we like that kind of immediate gratification and the behavior modification and just classically conditioning. It's like, yes, no, or yes, good job, or wow, cool, I got something for this even though I can't spend it right now. So I think it's just a wonderful tool. And again, there are other tools out there. Investigate them. Maybe this is not the one that works for you, but it works for us. We like it.
You mentioned that it was complex to set up. I mean, is it pretty straightforward? Once there may be some work involved in it, right? There's really work involved in it, but is it pretty straightforward about how you set it up?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I mean, I'd say the hardest part is when your kids buy stock for the first time and you got to set up that account online. It's not that bad though. I mean, you'll figure it out. It'll take you like 10 minutes, and then the second one you set up is easier than the first one because you already got one account there. And then the app on my phone just works good, just through facial recognition, logs me in, and then I can touch up there to switch to the different kids. And then once you set it up for the kid, then there's just a little drop down thing that says send invite to the kid, so that they could have a log on, in which they can't like do the trading or whatsoever, but they can see everything.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's not that tough. It's a little bit of work. I'd say the most work you put into it is if you have a big list of chores that you want to, because you got to build them all out, right?
How do you figure the pricing? Did you just
Well, I
the
probably pay,
kids-
again, pricing's gonna be different on how old a kid is and how good of work they do
Okay.
too. And then I'm probably a little bit lower too, because I put a lot of stuff on there. So even some of the regular stuff that I said, oh, they should do that because they're part of the family, I still put that on there, something they get paid for, it's just really low. But since there's so many things on there that they can check off, it adds up to a lot, especially with 5 kids. So I got 3 of them on it, I got a 6-year-old, she's pretty much figured it out, so.
There's been no
Yeah.
talk of unionizing or anything
Yeah,
like
right,
that?
yeah.
Get those
Fair
prices.
wages for active kids. So, all in all, you gotta be practical, and this is something that helps me be practical about it. In a way, kids are tech savvy, right? Even if you're not as much, they are. They're gonna like it and react well to it. This is an important subject, and I think that it's something that it's a gift to your kids. that is gonna make their life better, so that they're not stressed out about money all the time, like a lot of the adult population is. They'll have better relationships with their significant others because they won't be fighting about money. Well, who knows? Maybe their significant other won't have as good of a parent as you. And they're gonna have to work to train them
Right.
later on. But at least one part of the couple will have their stuff together. As always, if you have questions or anything, chat on here, reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. Hope this helps you live a better life, your kids have a better life, and have a super weekend.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.